Hello, Virgo. Um, Something's about to crack wide open, and when it does, everyone's going to see exactly how deep their obsession runs. Don't look away from this. Obsession hides in shadows, lives in private thoughts, operates through secret behaviors, thrives in spaces no one else can see. The obsessed person knows how they appear publicly versus what they're doing privately, knows how to perform normalcy while internally spiraling, knows how to seem casual about you while being utterly consumed by you in ways they'd be embarrassed for anyone to discover. They compartmentalize. Public face says, I'm fine, they're just someone I know, nothing serious. Private reality says, I can't stop thinking about them. I structure my days around possibility of seeing them. I've memorized patterns of their behavior. I know their schedule better than my own. That compartmentalization is failing. The walls between public performance and private obsession are crumbling. And when those walls come down completely, when the ugly truth of how obsessed they actually are gets exposed to witnesses who've been believing the casual performance, the revelation creates shockwaves that change how everyone sees them, how everyone sees you, how everyone understands dynamic that's been operating under surface of what appeared to be normal interactions. Here's what's coming: public exposure of private obsession, not you exposing them, not you doing anything to create this revelation. Their own behavior, their own inability to maintain the mask any longer, their own escalating obsession that's become too big to hide effectively is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than. That's what creates the exposure. They slip, they do something or say something or get caught doing something that reveals to others what you've maybe sensed, but what hasn't been visible to outside observers. And once it's visible, once witnesses see it, the secret becomes public knowledge, the private obsession becomes public scandal, and they can't take it back, can't unsee what's been seen, can't convince people they were just being friendly when their behavior clearly crossed every line that separates friendly from obsessed. Let me paint you the picture of what this looks like when it happens. First scenario: digital exposure. They've been doing things online they thought were private, following your every move on social media from accounts you don't know belong to them, screenshotting your posts, saving your photos, creating folders, maybe, with content related to you, stalking your digital presence compulsively, checking multiple times a day, sometimes multiple times an hour, to see if you've posted anything new, if you're active, if you're interacting with anyone else in ways that trigger their jealousy or their hope or their desperate need to feel connected to you through whatever scraps of information you make publicly available, and they get sloppy. They like something from months ago while scrolling deep in your history. They comment from wrong account. They reference something they shouldn't know unless they've been watching far more closely than casual acquaintance would watch. Or someone else discovers the extent of their digital surveillance finds the screenshots, sees the search history, realizes they've been cyber stalking you with intensity that's disturbing, that's obsessive, that reveals feelings they've been pretending don't exist, is less than has shown. Zero hash is greater than. The exposure creates chain reaction. Person who discovers it tells others. Others start paying attention to behaviors they'd previously overlooked. Pattern becomes visible to multiple people simultaneously. Wait, they're always commenting on their posts. They always seem to know where they're going to be. They mention them constantly in conversations where they're not relevant. They've been acting weird about this person for months, and we just didn't see it clearly until now. Second scenario, public breakdown of composure. They've been keeping it together in social settings, at work, in group contexts where you both exist, maintaining appropriate distance, acting normal, not revealing the depth of their fixation. But obsession creates pressure, and pressure builds until it explodes. Um, they see you with someone else and they can't hide the reaction. The jealousy is written all over their face, is evident in their body language, is so obvious that everyone around them notices. Or you're leaving a gathering and they follow you, not subtly, not with plausible excuse, but obviously, desperately, in a way that makes everyone uncomfortable, that makes people exchange glances and realize something is very wrong with how they're behaving toward you. Or they confront you publicly about something private, reveal knowledge they shouldn't have, display emotion that's wildly disproportionate to your actual relationship, make scene that forces everyone present to recognize that what they're feeling for you, what they've been experiencing about you, is far beyond normal, is obsessive, is concerning in ways that create discomfort for witnesses who now can't unsee. What they've seen is less than has shown. Zero hash is greater than. Third scenario, confession to wrong person. They've been holding this obsession alone, carrying it in isolation, managing it privately, but the weight becomes unbearable. They need to talk about it, need to process it, need to share with someone how much space you occupy in their thoughts. So they tell someone, they confess how they feel, they reveal the depth of their fixation, the intensity of their thoughts, the extent of their monitoring, and they trust wrong person. Or right person can't keep the secret because the information is too concerning to hold privately. Or the person they tell has loyalty to you that supersedes loyalty to them and decides you need to know what they're dealing with. Information spreads. What was private confession becomes public knowledge. People start talking. The obsession gets discussed in their absence. Concerns get raised. Mutual friends reach out to you to warn you or to ask if you're aware of how they're behaving, how they're talking about you, how much mental real estate you're occupying in someone who appears to others to be losing grip on proportionality, on healthy boundaries, on appropriate relationship between their feelings and their behavior. This reflection invites you to consider, have you noticed them becoming less careful lately, more visible in their attention, more obvious in ways they weren't obvious before? Now let's talk about what ugly truth means in this context. The truth is ugly not necessarily because obsession is inherently ugly, though it can be, but because public exposure of private obsession creates embarrassment, shame, social consequences that damage the obsessed person's reputation and relationships is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than. The ugliness is in the gap between who they've been pretending to be and who they actually are relative to you. They've been presenting as someone who's casual, who's got their shit together, who's emotionally regulated and socially appropriate. The exposure reveals they're none of those things when it comes to you. They're not casual, they're consumed. They're not together, they're falling apart. They're not regulated, they're obsessive. They're not appropriate, they're crossing boundaries in ways that others recognize as problematic, even if you've been too close to the situation to see clearly. And the exposure is ugly because it makes them look pathetic, and obsession diminishes the obsessed, makes them appear desperate, needy, unable to control themselves, weak in ways that society judges harshly, particularly if they're someone who's cultivated image of strength, of independence, of being someone who doesn't need anyone, who doesn't chase, who doesn't let feelings override rationality. Seeing them revealed as someone whose rationality has been completely overridden by feelings for you, that destroys the image. That creates loss of respect from people who thought they were someone different. The ugliness is also in how it makes you look. Through no fault of your own, through nothing you did intentionally, you become center of drama. You become person who has obsessed admirer. People wonder what you did to inspire such intensity. They question whether you encouraged it, whether you knew and didn't discourage it strongly enough, whether you're secretly enjoying the attention, even if the attention makes you uncomfortable, is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than. Unfair speculation swirls around you because their obsession, once public, inevitably makes you subject of conversation, makes people examine your behavior toward them, looking for signs you contributed to their state, looking for evidence you're either innocent victim of someone's unhealthy fixation or willing participant who liked having someone obsessed. The ugliness is in loss of privacy for both of you. What should have been handled privately, what could have been resolved through direct conversation between two people, becomes public spectacle. Everyone has opinion, everyone weighs in, everyone feels entitled to comment on situation because it played out in front of them, because the revelation was public, even though the relationship was private. And the ugliness is in aftermath. Relationships get damaged, reputations get tarnished, social dynamics shift as people choose sides or distance themselves from both of you to avoid being associated with the drama. Trust gets destroyed. The obsessed person feels betrayed if someone they confided in shared their confession. You feel violated if you learn they've been doing things you didn't know about. Mutual friends feel uncomfortable having to navigate a situation they didn't ask to be part of. But here's the thing about ugly truths: they serve purpose. Exposure forces reality, forces obsessed person to confront their behavior now that it's visible, forces you to acknowledge situation you might have been minimizing or denying, forces everyone involved to stop pretending everything is normal. when everything is clearly not normal, when someone's emotional state regarding another person has crossed into territory that requires intervention, requires boundaries, requires addressing rather than continuing to operate under polite fiction that nothing concerning is happening is less than #0. 5# is greater than. This reflection invites you to consider what would change for you if everyone knew how they actually feel about you. Let me address what you should do when this exposure happens. First, protect yourself. The obsessed person whose obsession gets publicly exposed often escalates rather than retreating. Public humiliation creates desperation. Desperation makes people unpredictable. They might double down, might make grand gesture to prove depth of feeling, might become aggressive if they feel you contributed to their public embarrassment even though you didn't, even though their own behavior created the embarrassment. Set clear boundaries immediately. If you haven't already established distance, establish it now. No contact or minimal contact. Clear communication that their behavior is not acceptable, is not reciprocated, needs to stop. Document everything if behavior continues. You might need evidence later if situation escalates to point where professional intervention becomes necessary. Tell people you trust what's happening. Don't try to manage this alone. The obsessed person is already involving others through their behavior. You need support network, need witnesses, need people who can verify that you're not encouraging this, that you're maintaining appropriate boundaries, that concerns about their behavior are legitimate. Second, manage the narrative to the extent possible. You can't control what everyone thinks or says, but you can control your own communication. Be honest with people who ask about the situation. You don't owe anyone detailed explanation, but brief, honest statement prevents speculation from filling vacuum. They've expressed feelings I don't reciprocate. I've been clear about boundaries. I hope they get the support they need to move forward. Simple, dignified, doesn't trash them but doesn't take responsibility for their feelings or behavior. Establishes that you're not participating in whatever dynamic they've created in their head. Resist temptation to publicly shame them, even if you're angry, even if you feel violated by extent of their obsessive behavior. Public shaming feels justified, but it escalates situations, makes you look vindictive, gives them narrative where they're victim of your cruelty rather than person whose own behavior created their circumstances. Take high road, be firm but not cruel. Protect yourself without attacking them. Third, examine your own behavior honestly. Not from place of self-blame, not accepting responsibility for their obsession, which is theirs to own, but examining whether there were signs you missed, boundaries you should have set earlier, moments where clearer communication would have prevented escalation. This isn't about beating yourself up, it's about learning, about recognizing warning signs earlier in future, about trusting your instincts. When someone's attention feels off, even if you can't articulate exactly why. About being willing to set hard boundaries, even when doing so feels mean, or when you worry about hurting someone's feelings, because sometimes hurting someone's feelings in short term prevents much worse hurt in long term. When unhealthy dynamic continues until it implodes publicly is less than #0. 5# is greater than. Fourth, give them space to deal with consequences. They're embarrassed. They're probably spiraling. They might reach out to apologize, to explain, to try to salvage something. Don't engage unless you want to engage. You're not responsible for managing their emotions about situation they created. You're not required to make them feel better about being exposed. You're not obligated to minimize the seriousness of their behavior to protect them from consequences of their behavior. Let them sit with it. Let them process it. Let them learn from it if they're capable of learning. Maybe this exposure becomes catalyst for them seeking therapy, examining their patterns, developing healthier relationship with boundaries and with managing feelings that aren't reciprocated. Maybe it doesn't. Either way, their growth or lack thereof is not your project. This reflection invites you to consider what boundaries will you establish or strengthen when their obsession becomes public knowledge. Finally, let's address the in front of everyone element. Public exposure serves function beyond just revealing truth. It creates accountability. When obsessive behavior is private, the obsessed person can rationalize it, can minimize it, can tell themselves it's fine because no one knows, because no one's calling it out, because they're managing it. But when behavior becomes public, when others see it and name it and express concern, rationalization becomes harder. They have to confront that multiple people recognize their behavior as problematic is less than #0. 5# is greater than. They have to acknowledge that what felt manageable privately looks concerning publicly. They have to deal with social consequences that private obsession never generated, consequences that might motivate change in ways private shame never did. The public nature also protects you in some ways. Once everyone knows, you have witnesses, you have people who will corroborate that their behavior toward you has been inappropriate if you ever need that corroboration. You have social pressure working in your favor, making it harder for them to continue pursuing you because pursuit is now visible, is now being watched, is now subject to social judgment that operates as deterrent. But public exposure also means public opinion, and public opinion is often ignorant and sometimes cruel. People who don't understand obsession will have takes. People who don't know full story will speculate. People who enjoy drama will gossip. You can't control any of that. What you can control is how you carry yourself through it. Dignity matters here. Composure matters. Not performing composure while falling apart internally, but actually maintaining your center, actually staying grounded in your truth, actually refusing to get dragged into mud even when others are slinging it. Be the person who handles this with grace. Be the person who sets appropriate boundaries without being cruel. Be the person who doesn't feed the drama machine even when drama machine is hungry. Be the person who emerges from this mess with integrity intact, with relationships preserved where preservation was possible, with lessons learned, but without becoming cynical or closed off to future connections because one person couldn't handle their feelings appropriately. They're beyond obsessed with you. The ugly truth is about to be revealed. Everyone is about to see what you've been dealing with. What happens after revelation depends on how you navigate it. Navigate with strength, navigate with boundaries, navigate with grace that doesn't require you to minimize the seriousness of their behavior, but also doesn't require you to destroy them publicly. You didn't create their obsession. You're not responsible for managing it. You're only responsible for protecting yourself and maintaining your truth. Do that. The rest will sort itself.